The January 6th committee used its 7th public hearing to connect the actions of former President Trump with those of right-wing extremist groups on that fateful day. And one previously unseen piece of evidence was a draft of an unsent tweet revealing the former president had planned to direct his supporters to march to the Capitol prior to doing so during his January 6th rally speech, contradicting the notion that this was just a spontaneous act. Joining us now is one of the members of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, Virginia Congresswoman Elaine Luria. Congresswoman Luria, thank you for being with us. And yes, we're already on our 7th committee hearing. A lot to digest from what we've been hearing over the past few weeks. But what stood out to you the most in yesterday's hearing?
Well, yesterday's hearing covered what one would call the call to action. How did this group of angry, violent people come to D.C., come to this rally, and then ultimately end up marching violently to the Capitol, breaching the Capitol, disrupting the certification of the election results? And we also went into, who are these extremist groups? And we had a witness who had formerly been a member of the Oath Keepers and has since left them, but he was able to give insight really into what their thoughts are, what they're trying to achieve.
And Congresswoman, next week's hearing, I know that you and Representative Adam Kinzinger will be taking the lead, and you tweeted this about that. Donald J. Trump was the arsonist who lit the fire and watched it burn. In the next January 6th committee hearing, I will detail his supreme dereliction of duty on January 6th. What can you tell us about how you plan to do that? How do you plan to show that?
Well, Mr. Kinzinger and I plan to go through that 187 minutes. What happened between the time that he left the stage and gave these inflammatory remarks and gave people the impression, such as our witness yesterday, the impression that he was going to himself march with this crowd to the Capitol? What happened between that moment and then around 4:17 in the afternoon, which is 187 minutes later, when he finally made a statement to the nation, to the people at the Capitol to go home? But essentially, he wasn't emphatic. He didn't take the leadership role as the President of the United States, as the Commander-in-Chief. We're going to talk about dereliction of duty. What were his duties as the President of the United States to ensure that the laws are faithfully executed? And myself and Mr. Kinzinger, both as veterans who've taken that oath of office to protect against enemies foreign and domestic, we understand that obligation, and putting it in that context, did the president live up to his oath and his responsibility to the American people?
And Congressman, we heard from Representative Liz Cheney, who's the committee vice chair there with the hearings. She said that your committee has now informed the Department of Justice that former President Trump attempted to contact a witness who has yet to be seen in these hearings. We don't know who it is specifically. What can you tell us about that? And what we need to know about that, what we're going to hear about that in the future. Would you like to see the Justice Department get involved?
Well, tampering with a witness, trying to influence someone who's testifying in an investigation, that's a crime. And, it also influences the results of the information we receive. We have indications in this case that the former president reached out to someone who may be speaking to our committee. And how many other people who've provided information? We've talked to 1,000 witnesses. Are there others who didn't feel comfortable coming forward with the full truth because they were either threatened, intimidated, or promises were made to them?
Do you believe that is the case? Do you believe that that was happening behind the scenes?
I could just reiterate the information that Ms. Cheney gave yesterday, that we have those indications. We've passed that information on to the Department of Justice, and I trust that they will look into that seriously, because it is a crime to tamper with witnesses.
Congresswoman Luria, I'm curious. You spent over 20 years serving this country in the Navy, where largely you and your fellow members were focused on foreign threats. We saw what happened on January 6th, and to see and now to investigate domestic threats. How do those two compare for you in your experience?
Well, I think that while serving in uniform, it felt like the threat was clear. During my time in the military, we had 2 ongoing wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I deployed on 6 different ships, supporting our efforts overseas to protect our country, our homeland. But to see something come from within that's such a threat, it's really disheartening. It just gives me a fear about the future of our country, for my daughter, for our grandchildren. What will this country look like? That's why this work on the committee is so important, because I feel like we have to get to the bottom of this. We have to understand what happened, why it happened, how to prevent it again in the future, and to make sure that we can protect this democracy that we all love.
Congresswoman Elaine Luria, thank you so much for your time today. We know you are very busy, so we appreciate you being on the program.
Thank you.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.